You were planning to stay with us? I didn't make a reservation for you, I said, feeling a rush of frustration and confusion. We were on a family vacation that I hadn't wanted to go on in the first place. It was at a fancy hotel, and my husband pretended not to notice the tension between his mother and me. "We'll see you at checkout, Ingrid," he said, walking away and leaving me behind. They disappeared into the luxurious hotel, and I felt utterly abandoned. My name is Ingrid, and I recently turned 33. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with my husband, Eric, our son, Henrik, who just turned 3, and my mother-in-law, Karen. Eric and I met on a blind date 10 years ago, and we ended up getting married. Our life has been pretty ordinary, without any major arguments, and our neighbors see us as a loving couple. 3 years after our wedding, we had our son, Henrik. Eric was always busy with work, but he still made time to help me with childcare, and I had no complaints about him. We were living a normal family life, but things started to change after Henrik was born. 6 months ago, Eric's father passed away, and Karen moved in with us. The last time I had seen her, besides at our wedding, was when Eric and I visited to announce our engagement, so it had been a long time. My first impression of Karen wasn't great. My father-in-law, on the other hand, had been very kind to me. I remembered how Karen bluntly expressed her doubts about me. "Eric, are you sure she's the right woman for you? I'm worried she'll give you a hard time," she had said. Eric tried hard to make her accept our marriage, but she still looked at me with disapproval. Eventually, with some persuasion from Eric and his father, she gave her approval. But I never forgot how openly she had criticized me. When Karen moved in with us, I worried if we could get along. I tried to stay positive and decided to do my best to make it work. When she and her belongings arrived at the house, I helped her unpack. She was very kind to Henrik, and while she took care of him, Eric and I unpacked her things. I handled the small items, and Eric took care of the heavy stuff. Everything went smoothly until Karen made a snide remark about where I placed a fake plant. "This should go over here." "What kind of education did you have?" she asked. Although it was just a decoration, her comment annoyed me. But I moved it to the spot she preferred, trying to keep the peace. Karen watched TV while I finished unpacking, and although she took care of Henrik for a bit, she didn't offer to help me with the rest. I was busy with both unpacking and watching Henrik, and Eric was resting after moving the heavy items. I finished tidying up with mixed feelings, trying to remind myself that Karen might be feeling unsettled about her new living situation. I pushed away my frustration and tried to stay positive, hoping things would get better. Karen's criticism didn't stop. It continued every day. One morning, I woke up early, prepared breakfast for everyone, and tried to take a rest afterward. "The house is messy. If you have time to rest, clean it up." Karen barked at me. She never gave me a moment's peace, constantly criticizing how I did things. Yet, she was hardly ever home during the day and did very little to help herself. I was getting mentally drained by this daily stress. One evening, I decided to talk to Eric about how his mother was treating me. "She must be having a hard time since Dad's gone. Take it easy on her," he said, not offering any real help. Despite knowing how she treated me, he chose not to intervene. Every night, I would lie in bed, feeling despair, often putting my hands on my forehead, trying to fall asleep. My 4-year-old son, Henrik, would sometimes wake up crying in the middle of the night. Exhausted, I struggled to get up and tend to him. One night, Karen, woken by Henrik's cries, shook me violently. "How are you still sleeping when your son is crying? How can you leave it to Eric? It's a woman's job," she yelled at me. I was too tired to respond, so I quietly got up and went to soothe Henrik. That night, I got no sleep at all. The next day, Eric was off work. I was thinking about what to make for lunch when Karen announced, "Eric is off today, so I'll make something." When she served the meal, I noticed one plate was missing. It looks like one plate is missing, I pointed out. I made it for Eric, who works hard, and my grandson, of course. There's none for you. Make your own, she replied coldly. I was mortified. It became clear that Karen was bullying me. For a long time, I had tried to convince myself she was just being tough on me to make me a better wife. If I didn't think that way, I would have broken down. Unable to talk back to her, I confided in my best friend from childhood after dropping Henrik off at daycare. That's definitely bullying. How are you holding up? My friend asked, concerned. As I shared the details, she listened attentively, and I finally broke down in tears. I had been holding in my frustrations for so long. She encouraged me, saying I was doing my best and that I would be okay. I will help you. We'll figure something out, she promised. We parted ways, but I felt lighter just having talked to her. My friend had suggested a couple of things. One idea was to put a hidden recorder in the house to capture what was said each day. On the way to pick up Henrik, I bought a cheap recorder. When I got home, Karen was out as usual, so I set it up in a discreet place. While cleaning, I found a piece of paper that had fallen out of a drawer in Karen's room. It was a personal loan agreement for $40,000. I couldn't believe my eyes but thought it might be useful, so I put the paper in my pocket. Later, Karen returned, and Eric came home just in time for dinner. As we sat around the table, Karen started her usual complaints. Oh, by the way, my friend gave me a discount coupon for a one-night stay at a 5-star spa hotel. When she brought it up, I could tell she wanted us to go. Eric, my husband, was very excited about the idea, and our son, Henrik, was thrilled too. I, however, wasn't so enthusiastic. I assumed it would be a terrible experience for me. Well, since you're here and you're always working so hard, you can come along too, Karen said to me. I couldn't believe my ears. This was coming from someone who had been harassing me so much. Maybe she meant well, I thought, though I doubted it. She wanted to book everything the next day. That night, I couldn't sleep as I tried to decide. In the morning, I talked to Eric. Henrik wants to go too. Mom won't watch him, and it's hard to take him with me alone. I want you to come with us, he said. You don't help me when I'm being treated so badly by your mother. I don't want to go, I replied. Eric had nothing to say to that. I didn't want to do him any favors while he ignored my suffering caused by his own mother. He pleaded with me to join, so I set a condition. Just as well, for starters, have a look at this. I found it when I was cleaning Karen's room, I said, showing him the IOU I found. Eric was stunned to see that his mother had a debt of $40,000. Can we help her pay this off? As her son, I can't just leave it as is, he asked. I managed our money, so he turned to me for help. Of course, I declined. I had no intention of helping someone who mistreated me. I understood his feelings as a son, but I could not accept helping her. I beg you, I want you to help me with this and the trip, he pleaded. Only if you accept my conditions, I replied. The first condition was that when Karen mistreated or over-criticized me, Eric must intervene. The second was that I would make rules for Karen, write them down, and post them around the house. If she couldn't agree to these conditions, we would kick her out. Eric agreed to these terms. We decided to start this after the trip. I asked my friend to post the rules in the house while we were away. Until the trip was over, we would act as usual, then drop the bomb. Eric agreed, so I decided to join them on the trip. The next day, I told Karen I was coming along and kept telling myself to be patient for a little longer. On the day of the trip, Eric took everyone's bags, and we were about to leave the house. You don't need to carry the bags. Let Ingrid do it, Karen ordered. Eric glanced at me apologetically. I obeyed her, thinking it was better not to cause any trouble, but I knew what was coming later. The bags were so heavy that it was hard for me to carry them, and I had to take care of Henrik too. I didn't think I'd have any energy left to enjoy the hotel. We took an Amtrak train a little further away and then drove over a mountain road to the hotel. The exterior and interior were both very beautiful and luxurious. Henrik was very excited when we arrived at the hotel. He ran around looking at everything, filled with excitement. Karen looked around, taking in the decor, and then went to check us in at the front desk. I grabbed my bag, ready to go to the room. What Karen said next blew me away. "Were you planning to stay with us?" "I only made a reservation for the three of us," she said. I had no idea what she was talking about and was at a loss for words. It slowly dawned on me that the only reason Karen had invited me on this trip was to use me as a porter. She had no intention of letting me stay with them from the beginning. I asked her, "Then where should I sleep?" She replied, "I don't know and I don't care. Why don't you just camp out in the wild around here?" I couldn't believe it. She asked me to join and then told me I had to sleep outside. I was furious and on the verge of yelling at her, but Karen and my family disappeared into the hallway. "We'll see you at checkout time, okay?" she said. I stood in the lobby, shocked, and then left the hotel. I had suspected there might be a catch, but I never expected to be forced to camp out. I was on the verge of tears. All I got from Eric was a text message saying, "I'm sorry." I couldn't even bring myself to reply. It was already past noon when we arrived, so I found a random cafe to have lunch. Afterward, I found an open field where I could see the night sky well. As soon as I arrived at the field, I received a call from my friend. "Hey, how's the trip going?" "I did what you asked," she said. I had given her a duplicate key and asked her to help with something while I was away. I told her what had just happened. She was furious and offered to pick me up, but I declined. I was thankful for her offer, but I knew that if I left, Karen would get what she wanted. After hanging up the phone, I decided to consult a lawyer just in case. I sent him the evidence I had collected, intending to sue Karen for emotional abuse. I was prepared to kick her out after the trip if I could prove she had planned all this. The lawyer assured me that I had a strong case. After the call, mental and physical exhaustion hit me hard, and I lay down on the fresh grass. I ended that day in an open field, with a beautiful night view and a chilly breeze. The next morning, I met up with Karen and my family just in time for checkout. "Ingrid, did you stay in the woods? I bet you didn't even clean yourself." "You are so filthy," Karen sneered. Eric tried to stop her, but she quickly changed the subject. From the way things looked, he must have told her that forcing me out was too much. Karen boasted happily about how nice the hotel was. Henrik's smile was my only comfort on the way back home. When we got home, Karen immediately shouted, "What is all this? Don't play with me." There were rules posted all over the house. She must have read some of them because her face turned red with fury. Then Eric showed her the IOU. Her red face immediately turned pale, and she stood there with her mouth agape in confusion. At first, Karen tried to deny everything, but under Eric's grilling, we discovered that she had spent all of her husband's life insurance money on a spree. When the money ran out, she couldn't stop her spending habits and borrowed money. Eric and I proceeded as we had planned. "I can't have someone who has debt living with us. I will ask you to leave. I have proof of what you have done to me, so I will sue you," I said. I played the recording and let her listen to it. As she listened, her face turned white as a ghost, and she begged me to let her stay. "You can stay if you abide by the rules and refrain from aggressive behavior," I told her. She eagerly agreed and apologized. "I'm very sorry. Please help me, I beg you." I never thought I would see her in this state, and I felt very satisfied. When I thought it was finally over, my knees buckled and I fell to the floor. Eric helped me into a chair and then started yelling at his mother about the debt. His respect and trust for her had completely shattered. She must have never imagined a day when her son would scold her so furiously. She frantically apologized, and after it was all settled, She kept silent and stared at the sky for the rest of the day. The atmosphere in the household changed drastically the next day. I woke up early as usual and prepared breakfast. Karen, out of habit, immediately made a nasty remark. What was different this time was Eric's response. "Mom, we just talked about this yesterday," he said firmly. She choked on her words and went to sit on the sofa. I almost laughed at the scene but held it in and continued preparing breakfast. Eric felt guilty about not being a protector and found it hard to stand up to the mother who raised him. I knew he was a kind man and that something in his mind had caused him to turn a blind eye to her behavior, so I didn't blame him. I needed him on my side, but couldn't hate the man I loved. He apologized to me in tears, and after that, he started to watch over me more closely. Karen's attitude toward me improved day by day. She still pointed out minor things, but I no longer felt malice from her. I hoped she would continue to improve. I could finally live with ease and keep a healthy mind. We arranged to pay her debt at $1,400 a month, and Eric and I cooperated to pay it back since Karen was too old to work. I got a part-time job and balanced work and home. Karen was responsible for taking Henrik to and from daycare, and she did a good job with that. Because of her past bad habits, Eric managed her finances. My family changed little by little for the better. No matter how much you love your husband, if your mother-in-law is terrible, you might think of divorce. I couldn't bring myself to do that, but if I had separated earlier, I wouldn't have had to endure her terrible remarks or camp out in the field. Fortunately, I found the IOU that helped me rebuild my family. Maybe I was lucky. I am also grateful to my friend for listening and encouraging me. Without her, I would have had no one to vent to, and I surely would have had a mental breakdown. From the bottom of my heart, I feel I must cherish our friendship. Whenever I remember the pain I've been through, I get teary and pat my own shoulder. At least I've tried my best to hold my family together. Even when I was depressed and had no motivation to cook or clean, I completed my tasks so that everyone could have a decent life. I've done my best to make sure my son is not inconvenienced, and that's why a sense of accomplishment fills my heart. I may not be able to forgive Karen completely, but she will always be my mother-in-law. I want to treat her kindly. A few years have passed since then, and my son has grown up and started preschool. We are almost finished paying off the debts and are considering moving to a new house. Karen has started to help me a little since then. My relationship with Eric has become better than before, and we are even thinking of having another child. My family is very stable now, and I am very content. I will continue to do my best for my family. Whenever I reflect on the struggles I've endured, I feel a surge of emotion. I pat my own shoulder, reminding myself that I've done everything I could to keep my family together. Even during times when I felt depressed and had no energy to cook or clean, I pushed through to make sure everyone could live a decent life. Ensuring my son wasn't affected by our troubles has always been my priority, and that fills my heart with a sense of accomplishment. Although forgiving Karen completely is difficult, I understand that she is still my mother-in-law, and I strive to treat her with kindness. Years have passed since those tough times, and my son is now old enough to start preschool. We're almost done paying off the debts, and we're even thinking about moving to a new house. Karen has started to help out a bit more, too. My relationship with Eric has improved significantly, and we are considering having another child. Our family is stable, and I feel very content. I will keep doing my best for my family, cherishing the peace and happiness we have now achieved.